Hello, my name is Xutech, and today I'll be talking to EVE Online personality Alex Clomsaver. Alex is a former member of the Kagutsuman staff, and in my mind, certainly, he is an e-celebrity. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Xutech.
Okay, well, it's been a while since we've heard from you. What have you been up to?
Uh, in Eve, nothing. I have thankfully not had to do any work for the past year.
Okay. So, what made you stop playing EVE? Or having anything to do with it?
Well, it's interesting that you phrased the question, though, because I never really started playing Eve. Despite having an account for about a year and a half, I only ever participated in one battle. And the actual fighting was over for myself within 30 seconds. So you're right to phrase it more that I've not been involved in Eve. Uh, what was the question again? God, this interview sucks.
Why did you why did you stop? Why did you stop having anything to do with EVE?
Oh, yeah. Well, this might sound like a broken record, but I did not like the direction the game had taken. I felt that the various groups back in 2006 had legitimately different styles of play, so you could look at, say, Red Alliance versus Dark Terra, and the fun would come from watching these two very different groups of people interact with each other. And this held through basically throughout the game, and I don't feel that that exists any longer. Part of it was just discovering what works best, a centralized system with subsidies to battleships works better than either outright communism or totally free market system. People have over time come to realize that, and all of the best groups have adopted such a system. But a large portion has been CCP itself deciding that the pet model would be perfect for everyone and changing the game so that was the only real way to play it. And then there were things like making logistics too easy so that losses no longer mattered. It just didn't seem to be a good simulation of personal relations anymore, so I stopped paying attention to it.
Okay, well, with that explanation, it sounds like you have an ideal EVE. Why did you start, what first attracted you to EVE Online?
The Goonfleet thread on somethingawful.com.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, the first I ever heard of Eve, and this might sound like a broken record too, was that one story about the guy who stole all that money. The fake story, it never actually happened. He just got pissed off when some pirates blew up his battleship, so he scammed tons of people out of money and then left the game. As the story would go, we would all later find out that it was a fake. But I thought that was pretty neat, so I looked up some stuff, and I found a few maps. This was before Jade or before Josh was doing it. So I thought that was neat, but then I didn't follow up on it. So go on.
So, did you have any experience in MMOs or multiplayer games before that?
I briefly, for a month or so, played the free version of RuneScape. So at least I know that Eve isn't the worst game out there. Because that was bad. I don't know if anyone else, I know people have because it's popular, but RuneScape is basically your generic MMO, except the graphics are even worse, and there's no overarching plot. Although I guess that holds true for most MMOs anyway.
So
the reason it was free to play, that's
yeah.
That way.
So when you were attracted to the game because of essentially a scam that you heard about. When you,
Yeah, but
yeah,
then I really got into it, rooting for Goon Swarm. This was back towards the end of the Syndicate era, basically right when they split off from OSS.
mm. So what were they like then?
Well, they weren't allowed to post on Chaod, and SHC and Kugu did not exist. So to most of the people who didn't read somethingawful.com, they were a big mystery. No one really knew what the goons did because they didn't talk to people in local. So they were this big group that came out of nowhere and would never talk to anyone. And if you tried to join them, they'd invite you out to their base and then kill you.
Yeah.
So it was part of like being in on a big secret. What are the Goonies like, or something like that? And of course, I knew what they were like.
Mm.
And then you could read the few threads where Goon Swarm higher ups, Tessusian or Violet or whatever, would fuck around with the various groups that they were fighting at the time, and it was very funny. Because the Goon Swarm leadership actually knew how to put a good post together back then.
So what was the command style like back then? What were the leaders like?
Well, there was Remedial, who was a space libertarian, and had a bit of a cult of personality, but I liked him. I actually liked Rem.
Hmm.
And then there were Sefti and some other guy, I forget his name, and they were like the big three at the time, and then there was Matani doing something. Apparently there was a lot of behind-the-scenes drama that I missed, which eventually ended up with Grun being formed when Remedial came back in XCH. But it was really fun. I didn't think there was much outward hatred between the various people at the time, although I was wrong looking back at things I would learn later on.
Hmm.
I definitely say that for people who never played the game before, they quickly came up with a group of leaders who could be stacked up against any other set in the game at the time.
So when you started playing, what did you set as your goal in the game? What was your aim?
I think it was to fly a battleship, to be honest. And to have fun, of course.
Hmm.
I accomplished one of the two.
Because you said you only were in, what was it, one battle?
Yeah. I can describe the battle. This was in the Great War when Red Alliance had several POS coming out of reinforced in the old Southern Connection systems, and we were supposed to go in and help them. Now, at the time, I had just had a frigate, because I was still new to actually being in the swarm. And like I said, I died upon warp-in. Basically, everyone died. That battle did not end well for us. But what I learned was that fleet combat might be neat to read about, but it's certainly not fun unless you're a fleet commander and get to fuck with other people.
Hmm. And what was CCP like at the time? They seem to be trying now to get to canvas players for their opinions a bit more. Were they like that then?
Well, there was a bit of that. I know they certainly tried to be everybody's friend, like, the nice teacher at school or whatever, but at the time, we didn't really like CCP at all for certain things that had recently come out. And I still don't really like CCP, to be honest.
So, of course, the next question we'd have to ask then is, how did you become a part of the Kagutsuman community?
I was here when it was formed, to be honest. I have a count, I think, it's either in the hundreds or the tens, but it's quite new. So I had that, and I'd shitpost. You know, you don't actually need to be involved in EVE to post, because nothing of worth is said, for the most part. So you don't even need to play the game, basically, is what I'm saying. I became involved in the moderation because Kagutsuman contacted me and asked me to. I believe at the time he just wanted someone active. We had a lot of problems 2 years or so ago having moderators who would actually log in. There was John Smith and Viper and sometimes Renata, and that was about it. Out of the 10 mods we had, 3 were logging in.
So at the time, were you like an important member of the community, or were you just like one of the kind of the side members?
Do we describe importance based on the number of posts or the size of your reputation, Bo?
I suppose that's one indicator.
Well, then
it can
I was
be.
the most important member of all.
So
and I should give Torsion a bit of a shout out for helping me with the reputation. The two of us are quite good at that.
So there was some kind of shady deal involved.
Well, I wouldn't quite call it shady. It was well within the rules. I originally started giving Torsion positive reputation because everyone else was giving him negative rep, and I thought that he didn't really deserve it. So I thought I'd fuck with the rest of the site by making him super popular, solely because I had the highest or second highest amount at the time. And then he started repping me back. So at that point, you know, it was just off to the races. We were the only ones who gave people reputation for a while. The system was sort of dead when it first started, so no one really had a chance to catch up to us for a long time.
So what kind of things were the site doing at the time that you became a moderator?
I don't think we were doing anything. Occasionally, Kay would, that's Kuru for people who don't know, Kay would, you know, get it in his mind to find something, so he'd go out to the sites and post various snippets of porn. But other than those spikes of activity every 3 to 4 months, not much was going on. It was just a place for people to talk about the game.
So did you have like foreplay and you know, the serious discussion and stuff like that?
But it was almost never used. There were 1 or 2 people who paid for it. I don't know why. I think they had it automatically set up. But other than them, no one was signing up. No one was posting porn. It was really, I thought it was quite bad. I thought Kay was fucking people over, even having it around at the time. Although that has since changed for those who don't have it. It's actually quite worth the money currently, from what I've seen. But as to the forums existing, they did not exist like they currently did. I ended up actually making or reforming most of them. For example, SDF, which you talked about, was originally a group of different forums. There was a fitting forum and a fan fiction forum, and I just thought it wasn't set up well, so I changed the names, made them dedicated to other things to try to get the site condensed so you could see it all on one computer screen. I think it worked quite well. It actually made the amount of posts in the other forums go up quite a bit.
Mm. So what kind of numbers were there at the time?
For
Active users, yeah.
oh, for the first half of my time, I don't think I actually made too much of a difference. There would be between 1 and 20 new posts a day on the average day, which is quite low. So the site, you could say it was slowly dying
Mm.
prior to me beginning the updates, at which point everything just took off.
So tell me about the updates, especially for people who don't remember them. How did they get started?
Well, I had been pushing the idea around in my mind because I was trying desperately to get people to actually engage with the site again. I'll go off on a tangent here. Prior to the updates, Kugusamin set up a system where the site was closed to unregistered viewers for a month to drum up people registering. We got one guy to register because of it, and everyone else left. So we were near dead. We had one post new a day on average. It was looking, and I seriously thought that the site would not exist in 6 months' time. So Kay came to me to get me to write a series of, updates. Just tell what people what is going on in the game on any given day. Which was an idea I had been bouncing around in my head, so I said, sure, I'll do it. The first update wasn't any good. People hated it. If you look back at the thread, you'll basically get the 10 posts after it asking either what is this, or why did you say that, or just telling me that it was dumb. Which is actually quite good because that's 9 more posts than you'd usually end up getting at that time. But within a week, I think it became obvious that people liked them quite a bit. And stuff just took off. The site became popular.
Mm. So how much time were you spending on researching your posts at
In the
that point?
beginning, about 20 minutes per update for the first month or so. At this point, I was doing them in a computer lab between classes. But by the end, things were more difficult. Mitani had stopped posting his Goonswarm War updates, which I was basically stealing for the delve sections.
Mm.
So it was taking me like 3 hours to do the things. And I ended up being wrong about a bunch of stuff, and people started bitching about the low quality, so I gave up.
Mm.
Just wasn't fun anymore. Incidentally, for those of you who are thinking about doing updates, don't. It's just soul-crushingly unfun. It is not worth it at all. It will make you insane.
So, what kept you interested in the site and Eve itself beyond you actually playing?
Well, there was the politics, and then there was the power. I like having power, of course. And there were people I knew and liked on the site back then. Notice that I used the words back then.
Mm.
So it was just a place to hang out and talk about stuff.
Now, you've probably noticed there have been a lot of changes in the politics of Eve over time. Did any of that ever surprise you?
Thinking back, I was genuinely surprised when Goonswarm teamed up with Red Alliance. And I was genuinely surprised when Band of Brothers first declared war on Goonswarm.
Hmm.
Other than that, oh, and of course the two big disbands were both quite surprising as well, obviously.
Hmm.
And I suppose, no, actually that's it. Those were the 4 moments where I found myself surprised. Like
No.
genuinely, how the fuck did this happen type surprised.
So for the first one with the Red Alliance, can you explain that?
I like the idea of Syndicate. I think it worked better for new users, and I don't think Goonswarm has ever been as good for noobs as it was back in those days. Part of it was the easier mobs and the greater protection of the systems, and part of it was, of course, that Crocite prices were high enough that you could legitimately make money mining back then. So I think that as someone who likes newer users, I think it was a shame that they left. Although obviously the older members were growing up and they needed better stuff.
Hmm. Okay, so the next instance was Bob versus Goonswarm. Why was that surprising to you?
Because Bob hated D2. It just seemed, and of course we were friends of the old Five Alliance. It just seemed natural that they would like us more, even if Dane Bollock was starting shit in every single Goonswarm thread that would pop up about the Smokesky incident. Other than that, I thought that we actually had quite good relations. I know a lot of goons had a lot of respect for Bob back then as being the most powerful and most competent force in the game.
So do you think there was what do you think the tipping point was?
They
Where they
declared
changed?
war on us, obviously.
But that,
Oh yeah, that. The tipping point, I'm gonna be quite honest, it was when the Alliance was disbanded. Bob remained the best force in the game up until T20 did, or not T, up until whoever it was deleted their alliance.
mm,
People say they were losing, but certain things like ceasing to contend in the three former Ashen regions were strokes of brilliance. They managed the Great War amazingly well. I don't think anyone else could have came out of their position alive, even factoring groups that came in after them.
hmm. So, okay. Um, what do you think is the worst part of the game? What's the most annoying and tedious part of the game then?
Flying. That might sound stupid, and I know it's impossible, but having to point to fly instead of actually fly your ship free space style is really quite lame, to be honest. It's not something I would willingly choose if I had a choice.
So what would you have instead? Is there an alternative?
Well, like I said, just make it like free space or free space 2.
So that's like a
Like X-Wing or TIE Fighter, I guess, if you
a
need the whole
dogfighting model.
reference. Huh?
Mm, like dogfighting.
Yeah, like that.
Hmm. Okay. What other parts? What about in the greater sense of the empire building and alliance building, that kind of thing?
Well, I think that jump treasures are quite annoying. They make it even harder for small groups to get kills. So back in the day, you and often would see some idiot get killed trying to jump his blueprints through 0.0. You can't really get that as much anymore because there's so much fewer jumps to make.
Hmm. So you were talking about how you preferred the earlier Eve from, say, I think you said 2006.
Yeah.
Can you give me more information about that? The kinds of things that you would prefer to be still available now?
Well, I liked it when losses actually mattered. When, like, losing a dread or losing 10 dreads or whatever would actually implement your fleet capabilities. You wouldn't literally replace them all within an hour.
Mm.
And you can scale that up to motherships or whatever, but the simple fact is that everything in the game right now is easily replaceable. So it's more like Counter-Strike in space than SimCity or Civilization in space. I think that's unfortunate. I liked that monetary losses were a big deal.
Okay. So, do you think that, what do you think of the CCP's ideas for these new additions to the game? For example, Dust or planetary interaction, and essentially trying to add different kinds of almost games, I'd say, to
Well,
Eve.
Dust is a game, and I hate the very idea that you'll have to rely on someone playing a totally different game in order for you to make your own gains.
Mm.
I haven't read at all what they're doing on planetary interaction. It could be fun, I guess. I assume it's just an upgrade to walking in stations, but I think they'll fuck it up. CCP's had an easy road being basically the only space combat game MMO around, that if they're going to compete in something with an actual competitor, they're going to lose.
Well, I suppose it's lucky then that they don't really have any competitors in their niche market.
Right.
In a way, it's kind of sheltered them from having to make um, more careful consideration about the changes they make. I mean, you've heard of the argument that new features are better than fixing implemented features.
Yeah. It's a shame that most of those features weren't actually broken when first implemented, though. I can think of a number of times when CCP have really just cut their own fingers off.
Hmm. So, have any of these new ideas that you've heard about? Are there any that you think are good ideas?
I do like walking in stations. It's very boring just sitting around twirling your ship.
Hmm.
I'm not going to say it's going to change the game or attract new people, but it doesn't sound hard to do, and I think it'll actually make certain parts of the game a lot less boring for people.
Hmm. And of course, you've already mentioned that you like the idea of jump bridges being less useful.
Existent, yes, that
Yeah.
much rather they suddenly get turned into floating wrecks or something like that.
Hmm. Okay, let's move on to metagaming. Do you, metagaming, of course, is
I
the
understand, yes.
yeah. So, do you think it's positive or a negative for the game?
I used to think it was a big positive. It was quite a lot of fun with spies, but I think that it's certainly gone over the line a little bit. I don't really like people fucking around in real life or, breaking the law to get into places, which a lot of people do.
Hmm. Well, that moves into my next question, which was where does it infringe on the idea of real world security and privacy?
When you make someone's real world details public,
Hmm. So, do you feel in a way that because CCP has used that as a marketing idea, the interest in metagaming, do you think in a way that they've kind of condoned it a little?
I don't
That
think
blurry line? Because it is difficult to understand what is permissible and what is not permissible
well,
in
I
the
wouldn't
game.
want CCP to start banning people for things they do outside of the game. Uh, that's one of the things I do like about them is that they'll never directly intervene to give someone back the items they got scammed out of or whatever. I quite like that facet. But I certainly think that they have cultivated this air of intelligence gathering when I don't think they're fully aware that that a lot of it is illegal.
So what about the other things that they've implemented, Plex and talking about microtransactions and things like that? What do you think about that?
No, I don't like it at all. I like games to be decided based on skill, not on someone's real-world wallet. So no, I don't like Plex. I thought it was a bad idea, put in place solely because they couldn't control real money trading, so they decided to start getting in on it themselves.
So, would it be if you wanted to make metagaming a more positive part of the game, how would you design it into the game without it infringing on people's personal security?
So what you're saying is, how do I take metagaming, which is not part of the game, and make metagaming part of it? So you're basically asking me to make the square circle, right?
Exactly. If CCP says that this is part of the game, the scamming and the spying and the politicking, then how can they make it a reasonable and arguably safe part of EVE? Because it seems that it is a little.
I suppose they could do certain things with electronic warfare so that maybe you could disguise your ship, give it a little blue pip or something, so it could dock at an enemy station. But if that happens, the different groups will just bring back their own individual out-of-game systems. That I forget what it's called, the Goon Swarm Picture Pack or whatever it was.
So it seems that metagaming is going to continue to be a part of the game.
Yep.
And that grey security area will continue to be part of the game.
Yes, it will.
Now, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap up?
I don't know. What about you?
Well, what about me?
Is there anything you would like to talk about before we wrap up?
Well, we haven't seen you in a while. Are you going to hang around the forums again?
I might, from time to time, post in certain threads that are about me or that interest me, but none of them will probably actually be dedicated to EVE Online itself. And I'm gonna have to do some interviews apparently with you guys, because I want access to your super secret chat thing.
I'm not aware of any super secret chat group.
So, some people might be hearing from me with my terrible girl voice in the near future, if this ends up working out.
Well, I do see you on Mumble a lot now. Maybe if people would like to talk to you, they can grab you on Mumble for a chat. Well, I'd like to thank you again, Alex, for talking to me on behalf of the Kagutsuman forums, and I hope you're back.
Okay, yep, it was nice talking to you on behalf of the no longer of the Kagutsuman forums.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so long.